Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be part of this student-based forum. Candidates will be called in the order of which they are seated and questions will be pulled at random. Each candidate team has 3 minutes to answer collectively. If each member would like to speak, you both will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer. This process will help the program move along smoothly and in timely fashion. Due to the time, we will try our best to make sure each candidate gets to answer the same amount of questions. We look forward to the response of the question for our 2018 gubernatorial candidates. For you guys, as governor of Guam, what would you prioritize as your number one issue to immediately address? What do you think would be your biggest obstacle in achieving this priority?
I didn't get your first name.
Derek, oh my bad.
Thank you very much, Derek. Good afternoon and half a day. Thank you very much, Derek. In this particular case, the first priority as governor of Guam, when Alicia and I in the Agalim Tiako administration will be tasked with, is understanding the fiscal situation of the government of Guam. We need to make sure that we go in there and we know exactly where the finances are so that we can allocate them accordingly during the course of the balance of the fiscal year in January 2019. In terms of the challenges may be, in this particular case, making sure that within a short period of time we'll be able to access all the information that we need to make those midterm decisions for the balance of the fiscal year. We are talking about 8 months. 3 months would have elapsed in terms of November, December, the fiscal year, and we will be tasked with that responsibility. Secondly, one single citizen in this island community is public safety. This war on drugs. And I need to recognize the Medania Task Force that has been doing a respectable job. But one of the issues that I want to ensure that we also address at the forefront is pulling all of our law enforcement community together and making sure that this war on drugs, this war on ICE is addressed immediately because it affects every single citizen, every single resident here in our island community. Thank you very much, Mrs. Moss.
Thank you for your answer. My name is Rochelle, and this question goes to the candidate team of Gutierrez and Bordalia. Many students are worried about the ongoing discussion regarding redistricting school attendance areas. Can you suggest some options to avoid having redistrict every couple of years?
Thank you very much for that. I'm not really sure what the districting plan is, but certainly here in Guam, we started out first with even districting of, for example, senators running for office. Guam is like Dedidu, for example, you have 40,000 people, right? Are you going to cut down streets to say that this street from Isengsung West or Isengsung East are going to go to different schools? I want to make sure that when they do a plan, that we have grown up in a community where we really belong to a certain village. And if there needs to be a high school more than just to accommodate the buses, accommodate the money that's spent, and whether you're going to build new buildings. Now, we can't even build Simon Sanchez after 6 years. For what reason? And then now if you start districting and you say you're going to put one school here, you're going to have to build. You're going to have to build to accommodate the new district or the redistricting part of the community. But first and foremost, take into consideration what the community wants in the districting plan. Don't just create it by yourself in the office and say this is how we're going to save money and not getting back to the cultural ties of our people. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Gutierrez. Hi, my name is Shante Leon Guerrero, and my next question is for the candidate team of Leon Guerrero Tenorio. And your question is, what life experiences do you have that best justifies you to be the next governor of Guam?
Thank you for that question. I grew up in Sinahanya in a 2-bedroom tin house. My parents, very, very loving parents. My dad worked 2 jobs just to give us a Catholic education, as that's what he wanted us to have. And so when I was also going to college, I worked really hard and struggled through college to provide the financial means. I worked hard and developed myself as a woman, as a nurse, as a lawmaker, and as a business person. I have experienced the compassion of our people. I have held people's hands who are dying and struggling for their last breath. I feel their struggles. I felt their compassion. As a senator, I passed legislation that affected and made a difference in the quality of life. My biggest legislation was the law that prohibited smoking in restaurants and bars. That made a difference in the health and the lifestyle of a people. As a businesswoman, I grew Bank of Guam from a $900 million asset to a $2 billion company under my leadership. And as a result of that, we were able to provide more businesses. We were able to provide homes for people. We were able to have people bring their dying relatives back to Guam because we gave them loans for medical assistance. So the financial means and the access was able through the growth of Bank of Guam. My experiences as a nurse, as a senator, and as a businesswoman are experiences, life experiences that I think will meet the challenges of our people here. The fiscal house of our government is in bad shape. I will use my financial experience to turn that around. We are more in debt than we are in revenues. We don't collect our taxes, yet we raise the taxes. My experience as a businesswoman in the financial industry will turn our fiscal policy. Why? Because we need finances for education, healthcare, public safety, and infrastructure. So I ask you to vote for the Leon Guerrero Tenorio ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your answers. My name is Renzo, and this question goes for Dennis Rodriguez. What are 3 things you would implement immediately as Governor of Guam to improve our public education system?
Hafaday, good afternoon to Michael. How are you doing today? My running mate, Dave Cruz, he's not here today because he's working like many of your parents. He's a teacher over at John F. Kennedy High School, but he's here in spirit. And so, you know, our education system has evolved. From the time I was in school, which is not too long ago, I'm 40 years old, I mentioned to some of you earlier, it really has evolved. Education now is not just the 4 walls that we live in. You know, back then, you have 30 or more desks facing the front, facing one teacher, you have one chalkboard. Nowadays, technology has improved. We have technology now that really takes our education opportunities to a next level. And so what I would do for education is look at how it's going to adapt to our students, how it's going to adapt to our learning. The way we've been doing education may not be how, you know, it is time now to educate our kids, because with all the technology that's happening. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be able to do with Colonel Dave Cruz, who's the teacher. He knows what the children, what the students, how they want to learn, and how it is for them to adapt to learning. We need to be able to adapt to how you learn and not how it's been for many, many years. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Rodriguez. My name is Faith Tovis, and this next question is for Team Tenorio Ada. Raising taxes or cutting certain government services, which would you view as the priority when it comes to dealing with lower revenues in our government?
Real quick, I'm a graduate of 1983 GW, so you don't mind if I take a photo of my fellow graduates. All right, thanks. The needs of our community are always going to come first. Making sure that you get enough teachers, making sure you have enough librarians, you get the technology, get the education system. We're rebuilding Simon Sanchez. These are all priorities. It comes down to money. You don't get anything done without money. In our community, in your households, no one wants to raise taxes. No one ever wants to raise taxes. I'm a conservative. I believe in spending as little as possible. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure that we make ends meet. We've done very good. This economy is growing. The island has grown. We've improved the economy by about almost $1 billion in the last 10 years. We've grown this economy from $400 million operating budget of the government of Guam to almost 900. We're going to have $1 billion pretty soon. The military buildup is on its way. The fact is that we can control the government of Guam. The number of tourists that are coming here is increasing. We've had record years for 3 last years. We've had the gross domestic product grow, and household income has grown as well. Now, things that are out of our control, North Korea threatening Guam, which reduced our number of Japanese tourists. That reduced the number of jobs, the number of people that are working, reduced our revenues to the government of Guam. It reduced the tourists coming here, so it reduces our economy. Other factors beyond our control. The federal government, Washington, D.C., the Congress hit us with a tax cut. Now, that meant more money in your pocket, but less money in the government. We need to make sure your teachers and every other government employee, those police officers and the corrections officers, the nurses, and every person gets paid, and we continue to drive operations. You don't want your teachers to not be able to get paid and not be able to operate the school. So, ladies and gentlemen, we temporarily asked for the legislature to address the shortfall, and they did, but it took them 3.5 months. So that 3.5 months that we didn't have the increase in taxes. So it really comes down to what are the needs of the community drives the needs in taxes. The legislature dictates how much taxes we assess, and we assess those taxes. We don't want to see taxes any more than anybody else. We want to see your cost of living go down. We want to continue to make sure you have jobs. We want to build the economy. These are things that you need to know about, you need to care about. Pretty soon you're going to be making a decision on who's going to be the next governor. You have to think about those who have the experience in the private and the public sector. Tony and I have that experience. We know what it takes to be able to get things done. We don't want to raise taxes, but we also have to make sure things get done. Teachers, education, public safety, public health, everything is a function of money. And ladies and gentlemen, we've handled our government very well. We've handled our finances very well. The bonds that we have are the bonds that the legislature has told this government to go get. The debt that we have, the taxes are all a function of the policy the legislature adopts and gives to us to execute. We've executed and will continue to do a good job for the people of Guam. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. And my name is Daviana Sasa. This question is for Ugin Limtiako. Our island is becoming a very expensive place to live. What are some steps you would implement as Governor of Guam to address or alleviate the high cost of living on our island?
Daviana, thank you very much. That's an excellent question. And you know, the underlying aspect of the question is, what will you as Governor of Guam do to ensure that the cost of living does not increase any more than where it's at today? Let me share something with you. Just this past few days, the gas increased by 20 cents per gallon. That reaches into the pocketbooks of every single parent that drives out there in our roads. That reaches into the pocketbooks of things that your parents could otherwise use and apply towards buying textbooks or buying school materials. So in this particular case, as a pledge and as a commitment, the Agun Litiako did not borrow for operation costs. Secondly, we have an obligation. Back in February, there was an announcement during the course of the budget discussions that there was about $180 million in outstanding tax receivables. If your parents pay their taxes, I pay my taxes every year, Alicia pays her taxes every year. In this particular case, we need to honor those who pay their taxes. So one of the other aspects that I will commit to in the Ogden Tiaco administration is that we will go out and collect those taxes so that we don't have to increase any of our taxes or any of our cost of living in the government. Thirdly, one of the things that we have to do is we need to look at reforming government. And it means prioritizing the areas that you expect your government to prioritize. Of course, education has to be prioritized. This recent budget reduction, out of the entire consideration, Mr. Fernandez, the superintendent, committed to reducing the DOE budget by $12 million for the balance of the fiscal year. That is a lot of money coming out of your education. And in this the education, public safety, and healthcare. Those are the areas that we want to continue to focus on, in addition to providing revenue tax with the people resources internally within the government of Guam so that they can aggressively go out there and collect the money on behalf of the people. And then we will deal with other fiscal challenges as they come along. So in that particular case, our commitment is not to borrow for operations. Our commitment is to not look at increasing taxes, but doing what the government should be doing, collecting it and making sure that we're prudent with how we spend our money and that we prioritize our government functions in education, public safety, and healthcare. Thank you, Daviana.
Thank you for your answer. This question is for Gutierrez and Berdalio. What do you feel is the main reason Guam is currently in the fiscal crisis? If you were selected governor of Guam, what would be something it would take to get the island out of this crisis?
Thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, young people, let me reintroduce myself. I am Carl T.C. Gutierrez, first elected to the legislature in 1972. I was speaker for 2 terms. I was Ways and Means chairman for 3 terms. I was governor of Guam for 2 consecutive terms, 8 years. I was the president of the Guam Constitutional Convention we had in 1977. The situation is this. The experience that I have, I've been through almost every part of the government. My first job in the government of Guam was to create the Data Processing Center, the computerization of the government of Guam back in 1965. And that's what you have right now, computerized Gov Guam. They didn't have it then. So I know the inside working of the government of Guam. Somebody said here that, you know, they've increased the revenues of the government of Guam from 400 million to 900 million. When I was governor, it was 300-some million. But I had a full complement of customs officers, a full complement of police officers, a full complement of fire department people, full complement of teachers. We didn't lay anybody off. It's how you prioritize those funds that come in. People throw out education, public safety, and health. Well, let me tell you where I take these 3. First, health. Because if you're sick, you don't want to go anywhere, right? Just lie down in bed and stay sick. And if you don't feel safe about going out to go to school, then that's number 2. And then number 3 is education. Because if you feel well, you have a healthy environment, you feel well, you feel safe, then you want to go to school. If you don't take the priority that way, like Guam Memorial Hospital, for example, they lose $35 million a year because the law that created Guam Memorial Hospital from the federal government, Organic Act, says that you cannot turn anybody away. If you were sick, you go in there, they'll take care of you. That's $35 million for free services. Well, I say it's now called an autonomous agency. Remember that. In other words, they have their own board that the governor appoints, and they deal with the running of that hospital. Every year they're losing. So as governor, the first thing I'm going to do is take that prioritization of healthcare and get rid of that board and put it where the buck stops at the governor of Guam. And I'm going to take the first instance to the Guam legislature to say, fully fund this as a regular line agency. Don't wait to say, I'm going to raise the taxes of poker machines and give it to you, tobacco and give it to you. They have no constant money coming in. You got to do it by a budgetary process by the Guam legislature. Give it the money there, and then public safety, put it to optimum use. That's why you got a lot of drugs and everything coming in, because there are 114 people short on the customs. Did you see what's happening? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. This question goes to Leon. What do you feel are the most important provisions in our current environmental protection law and regulations? What ideas would you implement as Governor of Guam to improve upon those laws and regulations?
Thank you for the question. And Hafadig echoes, obviously EPA is there to protect our air, our land, and our water. Those are the big things that we need to be prepared, that we need to protect. But because we have a lot of development coming, with the military buildup coming, really we need to be able to protect our resources. When the military says they're going to build something, our government agencies are supposed to be there to make sure that they're building the projects the way that they say they are, and that we're going to do everything we can to protect our natural resources and our cultural resources. I also think that our government needs to be very forward-thinking on global warming, and whether or not you think global warming is just a natural course of the temperature rising, or if you're like me, you think that process has been sped up because of pollution. We live in a small island. Our region is going to be very, very affected. It already is affected greatly. So we need to do our part from the leadership with our Governor Leon Guerrero and with me, going out and trying to make sure that we educate the public and do things we can in our daily life to reduce waste and make sure that our environment is clean. Lastly, I just want to say that we want to go ahead and educate many young people in the schools to protect our environment. It's going to be a lot, it begins in the home, and I hope I can count on all of you young people to help us with that fight. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your question or your answer, Mr. Tenorio. My next question is for Mr. Dennis Rodriguez. If you could repeal any current Guam tax, what would it be and why?
Jesus Masi for that question. I would repeal what was just passed recently, which is the increase in the GRT from 4 to 5%. I would also increase, and I will support the initiatives now before us that will repeal the sales tax. I voted against these two because I know we're not doing enough. I've said from the beginning, if we are going to tax our people more, let us collect what is due to the government first. Also, we need to ensure industries that have not been paying their fair share, these industries pay their fair share, because there's industries like the banking, insurance industries that have been giving tax holidays for many, many years. And it's time for them to pay up and pay their fair share. We can't ask your parents to say pay more taxes so that the cost of milk, the cost of bread, everything will go up. I saw in news yesterday that one of the telephone companies % tax increase. That's what I've been saying, is that we don't increase taxes, we go out and collect what is due. So those are the two that I will repeal. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. This goes to Tenorio and Ada. The island has recently seen an increase in the number of homeless people. What are some things you would do as Governor of Guam to address this issue?
Thank you very much. Great question. We've already done a lot. We've taken more people, be able to put them in temporary shelter. We've improved the number of people who are actually employed in this community, low employment. We have more people graduating from high school, and as well as a decrease in the number of dropouts from high school. That's a very good indicator of the future. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the ability for an individual to provide for himself is a function of his skills, his intelligence, his education. And later, I've been talking to many of you during lunch and basically explained there's many different opportunities. One of them is tuition-free college, because I think it's important for us to be able to invest in you on the front end. Any number of individuals that you find in our community that are out there that don't have a home, that don't have a job, that are finding themselves in really bad times, and even those many, in my case, 53 years old now, in public safety my entire career, I've seen many people that are in the criminal justice system, they also did not get a proper education. We need to make sure the education, because that's what's driving a number of the homeless problem, the crime problem, as well as the drugs problem. We can always lead someone to be able to give them a home, but they have to be able to sustain it. We just can't give them a home and say that this is going to be a permanent solution. The permanent solution is building the individual. The lowest common denominator, the most common ingredient to any successful civilization is the individual and the knowledge that the individual has. We're really big on making sure that we get temporary shelter. I think Guam Housing right now is at the tail end of an RFP process to be able to find temporary shelter. But we need to give them education. We need to give them labor training, give them the career skills, to give them a job placement. And the Department of Labor and other agencies of the government of Guam is doing an exceptional job at doing that. So the homeless problem is not going to go away until we make sure that every single individual has the skills. Let me reflect real quick. About 30-something years ago, I graduated here 35 years ago. About 30 years ago, I was a police officer, a young man. I could count on one hand the number of people that were homeless. It was a very, very low number. The number of people that have come up, it was over 1,000 at one point. Now we're about 700. But the facts still bear out to this. We need to improve the individual's skills, improve the work ethic, improve their promise of a future. And so when they know they have a future, they have the skills, they have the job, they have the income, the odds are they're not going to find themselves homeless or in crime or doing drugs. So let's improve the common man. Let's make sure that each one of you have the opportunity for a successful life and be able to realize your dreams. Thank you very much. Thank
you for your answer. This question is for Team Ugin Limtiaka. Current issues have indicated that the government of Guam is lacking when it comes to transparency laws. Do you agree with this, and how would you address it as Governor of Guam?
Half a day geckos. Half a day. I am also a 1981 proud graduate of George Washington High School. And so I'm very, very humbled to be here with all of you today. And so the question, which speaks about transparency. I think all of you, as well as your family members, your parents, grandparents, our community as a whole, is very concerned about what public servants do on a daily basis, how we are using and putting the hard work, the taxes that are collected, the revenues that are collected, the government appropriations, how are we really using them to benefit all of you and your families? And so the Ugin Limtiako administration would be in full support of transparency laws that allow for, that expose, that reveal, that show and hold us accountable as an administration, because we are public servants. And when any of us as candidates take on the responsibility of serving all of you and your families, then it is our responsibility and obligation to make sure that we are truly using our government resources to benefit all of you and your families and our community as a whole. Transparency is about accountability. Transparency is about making sure that the government, that the people who call ourselves public servants are being forthright, that we are credible, that we have integrity, that we are honest. And so any provision, bill, legislation, program that supports full accountability and transparency, the Ugin Limtiako team will be in full support. Thank you. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much for your answer. And this question is for Gutierrez Bordalio. What is your position on current gun laws on Guam? Do you feel that we need to strengthen our gun laws?
Thank you for that question, and Hafade Geckos. My name is Fred Burdell. and I retired from the Guam Police Department. And as a police officer, from the ground up patrolling, I risked my life going to domestic disputes, going to different crime incidents, robbery in progress, and we're always fearful that a person would have a gun, and would I survive? And I survived 29 years in the Guam Police Department. In terms of firearm laws, you could see nationwide that when there's mass school shootings, that there's the fear of, do you arm teachers?